In today's session, we will start with a new chapter, materials, metals and non-metals. Okay, so if you find the material in and around you, they are either made up of or composed of metals or non-metals, like a few examples which you can see on the slide. So they are either made up of metals or non-metals. Now, how can you distinguish between metals and non-metals? Yes, first let us see their physical properties. So here, as far as physical properties are concerned, metals are solid in nature, except mercury, which you will see in thermometer, which is in liquid form. And non-metals, they occur as solid, liquid, or gases. Metals are hard, except sodium and potassium, whereas non-metals, they are solid but brittle. They can break easily. And if you polish the surface of metal, they give a shiny appearance. So metals are basically lustrous, whereas non-metals, they are not lustrous, or they have dull shine or dull luster. Next, there's a property which is specifically shown in metals, which is called as malleability. So the metals, when they are beaten into thin sheet, they are malleable. So malleable is a property where the metals can be beaten into thin sheet. The best example is aluminium foil, in which you pack your food and preserve it, or you bring it to school. So this aluminium foil is beaten into a thin sheet, and this property is only seen in metals and it is called as malleability. On the other hand, non-metals are not malleable. They do not show this property. Next, metals are also ductile. This is also a very specific property which you can see in metals, where the metal are drawn into thin wires. On the other hand, non-metals are not ductile. You cannot draw it into a thin wires. Okay. So next, metals are good conductor of heat and electricity. That is the reason they are used in the electrical circuit. So the electrical wires, which on the top you see it is covered with the plastic, but inside the wires are made up of copper or metal. And on the other hand, non-metals are bad conductors of electricity. Metals are good conductor of heat. That is the reason your pressure cooker or most of your utensils are made up of metal, so that they conduct heat and help you in cooking. Non-metals, they are bad conductor of heat. Now, metals are sonorous. They produce sound. Example will be bell. Okay, so when you ring the bell, it produces sound because the bell is made up of metal. Whereas non-metals are not sonorous. They do not produce any sound. What will be the example of metals then? The examples of metals are iron, copper, aluminium and calcium, etc. Even magnesium is also an example of metals. The example of non-metals are sulfur, carbon, oxygen and phosphorus. Okay. So now let us see the chemical properties of metals and non-metals. How do they react with oxygen? So in your previous class, you would have seen the experiment of burning of magnesium ribbon, right? So this magnesium ribbon is a metal. This metal will burn because we all know that for anything to burn or for combustion, it requires oxygen. So metal will react with oxygen to form metallic oxide. And this metallic oxide, when you add it with water, they will form bases. So here you will see an example of magnesium, which is burning in air to form magnesium oxide, and when you add it with water, This will form magnesium hydroxide, which is base or basic in nature. The other example is rusting. When you keep any material which is made up of iron, and with the presence of air and humidity and water, that iron material start rusting. So yes, the metals do react with oxygen to produce base. Next, reaction of non-metals with oxygen. Non-metals also react with oxygen to produce acidic oxides, and when you add that with water, it forms acid. What would be the best example? Yes, the best example would be acid rain. Okay, so here, as an example, the sulfur, when it is burned in air, it forms sulfur dioxide. And when you add sulfur dioxide, it reacts with water to form sulfurous acid. So generally, the non-metals will form acids and metals will form bases. How will you test acid and base? Yes, by litmus test. So here, the oxides of metals are basic in nature. So you take a solution of base, add red litmus paper, and if you see the red litmus paper turning into blue, that means this solution is basic in nature or it is base. On the other hand, the oxides of non-metals are acidic in nature. That is, the solution is acid. So when you bring blue litmus paper in contact with acid, that will turn red. Okay? Hopefully, you have understood the difference between metals and non-metals on the basis of physical property, and also one chemical property, that is metals and non-metals react with oxygen to produce acid and base. Okay, so rest of the chemical properties we will be seeing in next session. Thank you.